Greetings, dear viewer. I am Luna, Princess of the Night. Normally, most of the user would be here to introduce the title, but I decided tonight that I would be here to introduce you to these 6 stories that you're about to hear, and maybe, who knows, some of the other stories that would be in the future. But for right now, we present to you a story about monsters and ghosts, a tales of nightmare night most foul. For tonight, we present to you The Monster Mash by FredMSlonkier. Enjoy. Our first tale involves Fluttershy going deep within the woods and encountering something that no pony expects. That will leave her forever changed. Enjoy. Fluttershy, Curse of the Night, Chapter 1. Everfree Forest was a scary place, even at the best of times. The land of Equestria had been tamed so thoroughly and for so long that the ponies who lived there had come to think of it as their world, as the natural order of things. That everything from plants to animals to the very air itself needed their guiding hooves. Only the Everfree stood as a reminder of ancient times and ancient magic, the rhythm of the seasons, the relentless pulse of life, the savagery of nature. Ponies who fed your deer did so at their own peril, for while the forest was not as malevolent as some said, it was no cradle to coddle and protect. Fluttershy was not in the forest at the best of times. She ran through the grasping trees, eyes wide, breath heaving, mane and tail snarled with twigs and leaves, desperate to find a way out. Somewhere above, she knew, the moon shone down on Equestria, but the tree hid its light away, leaving her only the slightest glow to see by. In the darkness, her mind, desperate to find a path to safety, conjured up all manner of beasts and boogeymen, lurking, waiting to devour her. Imagined boogeymen were preferable to the real thing. Her ears strained to hear some sign of the beast behind her, whether it truly had lost her scent, or was just waiting for her to slow and tire. It had ambushed them when she sought to gather the moonflowers that had been her reason for visiting Everfree Forest in the first place. Poor brave Rainbow Dash had stood up to the beast, only to be swatted away like an annoying gnat. She hoped the plucky mare would be all right. At least her own flight had drawn it away. If she had been less frightened, she might have had more time to wonder at the beast attacking her at all. Lilaps were strong, swift hunters, but they weren't savage. She would have expected that kind of ferocity, unless a mother holding its cub, and even then it would have stopped chasing her once she was far enough away. It hadn't responded at all to her faltering efforts to soothe it before Rainbow Dash laughed into the fray. Then there were the physical differences. It had been bigger than a typical laylap, sharper claws and longer fangs and terrible green eyes. Was it sick? Was it under a spell? She had no way to know, and at the moment she didn't care. At last her legs gave out, sending her pitching to the forest floor, sliding a foot or so beneath it before coming to rest. She gasped desperately for breath, her whole body trembling with exhaustion, hoping and praying she'd been able to do enough. She hadn't. It burst from the undergrowth, silent as it had been since the chase began, and latched onto her with all 4 paws, teeth seeking her throat. Her own panic scream stuck there as it tried to roll, and protect herself from the beast. But while she escaped instant death, it was only by substituting a leg for her neck. He latched on with a grip-like vice, tearing at her body with his claws. She screamed again, this time an honest wail, as it opened long bloody stripes on her sides and belly. She fought, kicked, and struggled, and all the time she knew she was only delaying the inevitable, that she was going to die in Everfree, without seeing her friends again. Not Rarity, or Applejack, or a sky-blue Pegasus pony who suddenly burst through the trees, twisting at the last second to deliver a high-speed kick to the laid-out side. It released her leg as it tumbled, crashing into the tree a distance away, and struggled to rise as Rainbow crashed nearby. "I'm not sticking around for that thing to get another round," the fellow Pegasus said, kneeling next to her and forcing her upward, her body unable to offer more than a token existence. "Get on!" Fluttershy did her best, but ultimately it was Rainbow Dash who arraigned her on her back, getting her settled as quickly as possible as the Layla found his feet. "Next up, the sky!" Dash said, crouching, then leaping in a great rush of color. Fluttershy squeaked and closed her eyes, leaving aside her own fear of heights. Trying to fly here was a dangerous proposition, the trees growing close together like a net. She felt the branches and leaves claw at her as she rose, slapping at her wounds and bringing her new levels of pain. But it only lasted a second, and then they were clear. The blessing of the light of the moon bathing her, the smell of fresh air and clean. "Just hold on a little longer, Shy!" Dad said, leveling out, speeding toward Ponyville as quickly as he dared with a passenger. "I'll have you at Nurse Redheart's before you know it!" Which is true, though not in the way Rainbow Dash had meant it. Fluttershy passed out before they even reached Ponyville. Consciousness returned slowly, soothingly. She blinked awake, looking around, found herself resting on one of the nurses' beds, the open-air building well lit by the noon sun. Cautiously, she sifted her body, discovering her wounds had been carefully bandaged. Thankfully, they didn't hurt nearly as much as she expected to them. "You're awake!" cried the familiar voice. "Hey, everyone! Fluttershy's awake!" "Shh!" another voice said. Fluttershy turned to see Pinkie Pie shushing Applejack. "Can't you see she's trying to rest?" That was sweet of her, Fluttershy thought. It would have been sweeter if her voice had been louder than the farm pony's, though. "Oh, Fluttershy," Applejack said. And Twilight Sparkle and Nurse Redheart made their way over to her bed. "You sure has worried. Rainbow Dash was up all night making sure you were all right." "Are you feeling all right?" Twilight wondered. "Dash said you were attacked by a monster, but I couldn't find what she described in any of my books."
"Yes, I'm fine,"
Fluttershy replied timidly.
"It was a Layla, but it was bigger and meaner and
She shivered at the memory, and Applejack moved to place a hoof on her forehead. "Well, don't you worry, no," she said. "That farmer's back at the Everfree, and you are home where you belong." "Home?"
Oh no!"
Fluttershy squeaked, sitting bolt upright despite the pain.
"He's a bunny. He's too sick with Greenlong. That's why he went into the forest in the first place. I had to take him for his medicine."
She tried to get out of bed, but Nurse Redheart interrupted with Hose a hoof. "You're not going anywhere until I take a look at your injuries, young filly," she said, her voice stern but caring, and the bright yellow pegasus sank back. "This is going to sting a bit, but I'll be as gentle as I can." Fluttershy sat quietly, if anxiously, as the nurse carefully peeled away the largest of the bandages, exposing the wound beneath. Fluttershy found her attention drawn to the others. Applejack looked relieved, Pinkie Pie looked curious, and Twilight puzzled. So did Nurse Redheart, just for a moment, before smiling. "Well, I have to say, you're healing quite nicely," she said. Fluttershy looked down as the nurse began removing the other bandages. She was healing nicely, surprisingly so, in fact. She expected large, angry-looking gouges, but instead it looked like she had days of recovery overnight. Cuts well scabbed over, necks gone together. In fact, only half of the bandages Redheart took off needed to be replaced at all. "I don't know how you've managed to recover so well," the nurse said, looking mystified, but grateful. Note to self: in these type of stories, when you have a fast healing recovery, you're either about to become a monster, or you're Wolverine. Fluttershy wasn't so sure what to say, so she just smiled hesitantly.
"Does that mean I can go take care of Angel?"
She wondered. "I think that'll be all right," Redheart said. "Just be sure to take it easy for the next day. Change your bandages regularly, and let me know if anything starts to feel wrong." Fluttershy nodded, the gesture short and firm, and eased herself out of the bed, smiling again as she settled on her host.
"Thank you all so much for taking care of me,"
she said to the assembled ponies.
"And tell Rainbow Dash to come see me so I can thank her too. But I really must be getting home. Oh, I hope he's all right."
With that, she hurried from the building, steps off a bit stiff at first, but swiftly gaining strength as she headed toward the road to her little cottage. Twilight Sparkle watched her go, tuning out Pinkie's exciting babbling about getting a Get Better Fluttershy party into Got Better Fluttershy party. Nurse Redheart was right. The injuries Rainbow Dash had described to her should have taken much longer to heal. "Something's not right," she said to herself, before turning and heading for home. Fluttershy had never been so glad to be home before. Greenlung wasn't a common ailment, thankfully, and neither was it fatal, but the great faint sound for which the disease was named wasn't pleasant, and Angel's little lungs seemed to have an endless supply. There wasn't a lot, besides rest and fluids, that Fluttershy could do for him. But Moonflower tea would soothe a sore throat for coughing and make the liquid thinner and easier to clear. He fussed and squirmed when she tried to give it to him, probably upset about making her worried, the poor thing. But eventually he'd drink it, as he'd been able to relax, drink some of her own tea, and putter about the house for a bit. She really was feeling much better now. The wounds had been incredibly itchy, but she dutifully resisted the urge to scratch much, and the itching finally subsided. Her aches and pains seemed to have faded away too, and if it weren't for the bandages on her sides and belly, she wondered if she somehow dreamt the whole thing. She kept thinking back to the attack, but not how she expected to. Well, at first she felt what she expected: fear, trembling, the sight of it lurking in her eyelids, waiting for it to blink. But mostly she felt annoyed at herself for not being strong enough to stay up to the lay-lap, for needing to be rescued. Again. It wasn't a very nice thing to feel, but she couldn't seem to chase the feeling away. She hoped she'd feel better soon. The light outside was changing, she noticed. It was almost time to take Angel some more tea. Thinking of this reminded her that it was time to change her bandages as well. So she sat down on the couch and gingerly peeled away the largest of the bandages, bracing herself for the sight ahead. She blinked. Reaching down with a hoof, she gently brushed at where the claw marks had been, and only now a crumbly sort of scab was visible. The crumbles stuck to tiny hairs, but a moment's patience removed them, revealing unmarked skin beneath. There wasn't even a scar. Trying to make sense of this, she almost missed the knock on the door. Despite it being delivered in a sharp staccato beat, she couldn't have missed the follow-up, however. "Hey, Fluttershy! Let me in! It's gonna get dark out here in a second!" Falling to her hooves, she made her way to the door, only to see Rainbow Dash standing in the light of the setting sun.
Oh, hello, Rainbow Dash,
she said softly.
"Won't you come in?"
Dash walked in, plunked herself on the couch, and grinned as Fluttershy closed the door, and made her own way back to the couch. It struck Fluttershy as a teensy bit rude, and for once, it wasn't as easy to dismiss the thought. "I heard you wanted to have a word with the Dash," her guest said as he sat down. "Gotta thank me for saving your life, huh? It's no problem. I was just sorry you got hurt in the first place. Of course, it wouldn't have happened if that thing hadn't got to jump on me." Rainbow Dash frowned at the memory. Well, Fluttershy frowned a little as well, for a different reason. Had Dash really come out here to strike her own ego? "I mean, you saw it," Dash continued, oblivious to Fluttershy's growing irritation. "That thing was huge! Well, okay, not huge, but it was strong and sneaky. If you hadn't screamed, I might not have found you in time. It's too bad, too. I was looking forward to going another round with that thing. I would have been whoosh!" She moved her forearms as if navigating treacherous obstacles. "Where am I? I'm in the trees. I'm over here. Whoop! I'm over here. And then BAM! She swung her one hoof in a punch. Right in the jaw! And it'll all be like, roar! And it'd be like, too slow! Another punch! BAM! There you go. Oh, you want to get up? Well, too bad, because this is Rainbow Dash says. And Rainbow Dash says,
"Will you please shut up?"
Rainbow Dash fell silent, staring at Fluttershy in shock. The pony was seething. Last time she saw Fluttershy seethe was when she lost it at the gala, and that had been a bad night for every pony involved. There was something else, something she never experienced. Fluttershy was scaring her. "Fluttershy, are you okay?"
"Of course I'm okay,"
Fluttershy replied, staring at Rainbow Dash. Couldn't help but wonder if this was the stare.
"I've never felt better. Oh, wait, I did feel better one time. When was it? Oh, yes, it was before a certain annoying pony came over to brag about how strong and brave she is. And isn't it a good thing she was here to rescue poor, helpless Fluttershy?"
"Shy, you're kind of creeping me out here." It was an understatement. Rainbow Dash's skin was crawling. Fluttershy was acting like she was under Discord's spell again. Only then she was an obstinate jerk. Now Dash felt like Fluttershy might actually hurt her.
"Well, too bad!"
Fluttershy barked, and Rainbow Dash jerked back.
"Because I'm tired of everybody treating me like I'm some delicate little flower. Oh, wicked poor Fluttershy, afraid of her own shadow. Isn't it sad? A big stick can't even fly. You don't even laugh. I'm too pathetic to laugh at. Up in your big dumb clown house thinking flying is so awesome, and too bad Fluttershy is such a weenie."
Fluttershy, that's not true! Dash bolted, tilting out of her trance of fear. I would never think anything bad at you! She paused, looking over at Fluttershy with a more critical eye, noticing the tension in her body, the slight wobble in the focus of her eyes, the sweat on her brow. Oh my gosh! You must be, like, hallucinating or something. You stay here. I'm going to get Nurse Redheart.
I don't need a doctor!
Fluttershy screamed.
I've never felt better!
Dez's pupils strike to pinpricks. Freaking out was one thing. Snarling at her with visible canines was another. She scrambled off the couch and back toward the door, unable to take her eyes off Fluttershy as she changed. Her body was getting leaner, more muscular. Her mane and tail were going wild and ragged. Her hooves were larger, and their edges seemed to be sharpening by the second. Her teeth were terrifyingly pronounced. Not just the canines, but all of them, and the image of those teeth clamping onto flesh and never letting go sprung unbidden. Worst of all were the eyes. Fluttershy had wide, innocent eyes, the color reminding Dash of nothing more than the shallow water at the world's best beach. Now they were a neon green, as he had seen just last night, and the beast that attacked them. Fluttershy snarled and leapt. Rainbow Dash screamed. The trouble with working on a farm, Applejack groggily reflected, is that when you went to sleep, you needed that sleep. There was a lot of hard work on the farm, and she was only happy to do it. But she couldn't just stay up on a whim to watch the stars, or read a book, or what other ponies got up to that night. She lay down, went to sleep, and woke up in the morning full of energy she needed for a new day. At least, that was the plan. The scream came again, and Applejack only then realized that was what woken her the first time. A weird scream, first higher, then lower, then higher again. As he stumbled to the window, she reflected that it sounded an awful lot like Applejack! Rainbow Dash screamed, boring past her window. She blinked. Rainbow, what's the matter with you? Some of us are trying to... A pink and yellow blur nearly sucked her out the window. Sleep? Had that been Fluttershy? Chasing Rainbow Dash? And keeping up? Fluttershy's gone crazy! Rainbow Dash yelled, circling the farmhouse. One word per revolution. Monster! Big teeth! Help! Applejack boggled in the moment, then shook it off. But you're a sex sugar cube! She yelled, hoping that Dash heard her, then ran out of her bedroom to get what she needed. This was crazy, Rainbow Dash thought. This was impossible. Even Fluttershy were so feverish, she forgot her fears and attacked her best friend. The sky was Dash's element. No pony was faster than her, and even if Fluttershy somehow managed to push herself to match her, she'd never be able to hold the speed. Not in this condition. Risking a glance back, she realized Fluttershy wasn't holding the speed at all. She was gaining. Applejack, now would be a good time! She yelled. I'm ready! Came a welcome cry from the ground, as Applejack burst out of the farmhouse, lasso already spinning. Rainbow Dash gave the house a few more circles, dipping as close to the ground as she dared, counting out the spins as she passed. 3, 2, 1, now! With that, she shot off in a straight line, nearly colliding with a fence before pulling off, letting gravity bleed off her velocity. If Applejack grew up, she knew the instant Fluttershy ran her from behind. Nothing. She hung in the air, wings reflexively putting her to a hover and looking down. Descending carefully, she saw that Applejack had successfully wrangled Fluttershy, hog-tying the Pegasus as neat as a present. The Earth Pony looked down as he got a good look at Fluttershy for the first time, then looked up at Rainbow Dash. What's happened to her voice? What happened to her everything? Dash retorted. She looks like that thing got her in the forest. Must be contagious, Applejack replied. Go get Twilight. I'll keep an eye on her until you get back. Rainbow Dash shot off a sloppy salute. I'm on it, she replied, darting off. Applejack looked down slowly, gazing sadly at the snarling, rabid Fluttershy, still trying to break loose. Applejack had to double rope everything to keep her from breaking free. Her! Fluttershy, who wouldn't hurt a bug. But whatever happened to her had made her strong. Stronger than Applejack. And only her focus on Rainbow Dash, giving the farmer a chance to bring her down. Taking a deep breath, feeling janky from the aftermath of it all, she spoke softly and sadly. What in tarnation happened to you? Fluttershy's second visit to Nurse Redheart was less pleasant than her first. Groggily, She opened her eyes, staring uncomprehendingly at the horizon for a moment before trying to sit up, finding herself practically hogtied to the bed, lying on her belly, barely able to move.
Oh my!
She breathed.
Where am I? What's going on?
What? Fluttershy? It was Rainbow Dash's voice. She turned to her head with some difficulty, to see the Pegasus pony push to her hooves, only to pause halfway and stare at her. You're back to normal!
I am?
Fluttershy echoed, looking confused. Back to normal from what? But before she could muster the words, Rainbow Dash was hurrying to tell the others the news. Unable to turn her head far enough to see, Fluttershy sighed and returned it to a more or less comfortable position, albeit one that left her squinting in the morning sun. Fluttershy? She turned again, this time seeing Twilight sparkle, a book held in her magical grip and looking serious. What do you remember about last night? Confused by the question, Fluttershy brought back.
Well, Rainbow Dash and I were going to into the forest for some moonflowers. No, that was the night before.
She said, looking confused.
I was at home, and I was going to get Angel his tea. Then, Rainbow Dash came over.
She was incredibly rude. Couldn't see how Fluttershy felt. Why did he have to go on about...
I don't remember.
She finished weakly.
Did I pass out? I'm so sorry.
Twilight shook her head slowly, looking grim. It's worse than that, she said. You changed into some sort of horse monster. You attacked Rainbow Dash! Fluttershy gasped.
Is she alright?
Yeah, like you could catch me, Dash declared with a familiar bravado as she returned. You sure gave me a workout, though. Applejack wound up tossing you up like a turkey, and we brought you here.
Oh my, I'm sorry to have been a bother.
No sweat, Rainbow Dash replied, and I mean that. You said some stuff before. You know. She visited a bit. And I just want you to know I'm there for you. Just like you're there for me when I need it. She stared at Fluttershy with an odd intensity. And after a moment, the yellow Pegasus nodded.
So, can you let me go?
She asked helpfully. Twilight looked pensive.
I mean, if that's okay.
I don't think this was an isolated incident, Twilight said. For your own safety, I think we should keep you restrained. Come on, Twilight! Rainbow Dash said, surprising Fluttershy. I mean, yeah, we don't want her biting any pony, but do we really need her to be tied up like this? Can't we just lock her up or something? Twilight considered this, then nodded. All right, Fluttershy, until we figure out what's going on, I'd like you to stay in my basement. I can rig up some space so you'll be comfortable without risking you hurting any pony. You want to lock her up underground? Rainbow Dash protested, furrowing her wings in shock. Are you trying to make her go crazy? It's the safest place I know, Twilight replied, looking briefly frustrated. Besides, she's not as... She looked for a diplomatic way to put it. Into the air as you. Can you take care of Fluttershy's animals until we figure it out? I don't know, Twilight. The last time Rainbow Dash tried taking care of animals. These animals won't listen. Not one tiny bit. Didn't turn out so well. Rainbow Dash hesitated, then nodded. Don't worry about a thing, Fluttershy. Rainbow Dash is on the case. Fluttershy wasn't so sure about the idea herself, but she had to admit, she didn't want to hurt Angel or any of the other animals in her care. Hesitantly, she offered a smile. Don't worry about a thing, Twilight said. I'm sure I've read about your symptoms before. I'll have a cure figured out in no time. This is going to take forever, Twilight groaned. Setting up somewhere to keep Fluttershy had been the easy part. She just had to clear out some junk she had used in her ill-fated Pinkie Pie perusal, get some books and bedding set up, make sure to lock the door. Fluttershy had been quietly accepting of her fate, settling in without complaint to read, eat the meals Spike brought her, and wait patiently while Twilight searched for her books, or tried one of the dozen possible cures. Unfortunately, the reference Twilight half remembered was proving elusive. She found any number of references to some of the symptoms, but not the entire package. Worse, some of the diseases that sounded something like what Fluttershy had were incurable once they had progressed this far. Something that made a heavy weight settle in her stomach. And none of them mentioned the patient returning to normal, which Fluttershy had, at least for a day. As the evening grew near, though, Fluttershy had begun showing warning signs. Increased irritability, restless energy, tensing and flexing of her wings. She knocked her dinner out of Spike's hands and started eating it right off the floor, When Spike had considered reason enough to run upstairs and Twilight enough reason to lock the door. Then come the pleading to be let go. Then the threats. Then violence. Directed first at the door. Then, when it refused to give, anything she could get her hooves on. Twilight had already moved anything fragile or dangerous out of the basement. But still she cringed at the crashing and banging. It didn't exactly help her study. Any luck? Sighing, Twilight turned to Spike. Not really. I don't understand it. I've tried everything sort of a stake to the heart, and nothing's worked. It's not a spell. It's not a disease. I don't know what it is. Maybe you just need to take a break, Spike suggested. You missed lunch and dinner. He looked accusingly at her, as he sighed softly, remembering the pride he took in his cooking. Maybe you're right, she said. I just can't help but feel like I'm missing something important. She got up from the stack of books she had been going through, and started to follow Spike into the kitchen. Then she stopped. Did you hear that? Hear what? Spike asked, pausing and twitching his fins. Exactly, Twilight said, dashing over to the door to the basement. Lock the front door! Be ready for anything! Carefully, trying to make as little sound as possible, Twilight opened the door, stepped inside, and gasped. She's gone! The flaw in Twilight's plan lay before the assembled ponies. A great earthen tunnel, large enough for a pony to work her way out through, leading right down to her basement. Piles of dirt were scattered around, and hoof prints led only a short distance from the hole before vanishing into the grass. How could I have been so careless? Twilight lamented. I should have used chains! Or bars! Or chains and bars! Now she's loose and it's all my fault! At least she didn't stick around and get all biting. Pinkie Pie consoled, or tried to. Ooh! But what she did? What she bit me? Would we be fighting? Would it be like zombies? Zombies don't bite other zombies, right? She would bite every pony, and then we would have a mini pony party! Only that's bad. I wouldn't blame yourself, dear, Reggie said. She'd been looking around the scenes of crime, so to speak, and now approached Twilight with a frown on her delicate features. Well, I can't blame Fluttershy, Twilight protested. She's sick, or possessed, or something! What else would she think her way out? She didn't, Rarity said, pointing a hoof. Twilight looked blankly at the mound of dirt Rarity was pointing at, then stared in shock. Somebody dug in! She turned to the hoof prints, looking at them with a fresh eye, no longer distracted by shame. Too many tracks. More than one pony. They took her. But how? And where? I don't know about the how, Applejack said, having doing some investigating on her own. But I reckon I can find the where. They're good to hide the trail, but not that good. And Fluttershy's hardly trying. Just let me grab Winona and we'll have a track of 2 strikes. Twilight nodded. You do that. Rainbow Dash, see if you can spot them from the air. The Pegasus nodded and took off. Ready? Pinkie Pie, you get what we need to go after them. She glanced at the cloudless sky. At least the moon's full tonight. We shouldn't have any trouble. Spike blinked, looking over at Twilight, as he stopped talking in space. The air ponies followed Spike's lead. The moon. Of course! But I thought that was wiped out centuries ago. Her eyes darted back and forth in a way he had seen before, as if she were reading her own thoughts as they passed her brain. If that's true, then it means... She fell silent again, but as Pinkie Pie, peering puzzledly at the purple pony, opened her mouth, Twilight spoke 4 familiar words, though they weren't the words he was expecting her to hear. Spike! Take a letter! She ran. There was no anger, no fear, no thought. Just the light of the moon, the soft grass on the underfoot, the warmth of the herd all around her. There had been fear before, and anger in the dark place, underground. Her herd had betrayed her, isolated her, punished her. She had struck out again and again, striving for freedom, achieving only destruction. Then she heard the sound. Hooves scraping at dirt, stones flying, roots snapping. Fear had gripped her, leaving her helpless as she watched the unfamiliar ponies tear through the wall. Like her, yet not like her. She had tried to fight, to break through and escape, but the leader had stopped her. He had thought, but only briefly, his strength and skill so much greater than her own, that he was able to defeat her without so much as a mark on her skin. She understood, and knelt, and he accepted her submission, made her part of the herd. Now she ran. She didn't know where she was running to. She didn't need to know. He knew, if she would follow him, He would keep her safe and protect her. Everything would be all right. Suddenly, a shot of color pierced the darkened sky. It flew overhead, the wind whipping manes and rustling grass, leaving the herd confused and uncertain. He calmed down with a dozen tiny gestures, ordered them to protect her with the slightest of sounds. And when the light came again, they stood their ground, lusting out with hooves and teeth, denying the predator its prize. It screamed at them, voice settling her ears back in spite of its presence. She knew it suddenly realized. It had been there, in the pain and darkness, protecting her. She, was a part of the old herd, the one who had saved her, the one who wanted her to be free. For a moment, she yearned to join her, spread her wings the tiniest fraction. But she had a new herd now. She couldn't leave, not while they were fighting to protect her. The brave pony screamed again, "Twilight! I found them!" Fluttershy had covered a surprising amount of ground, especially since he had been running, not flying. Twilight was gasping for breath by the time they reached Rainbow Dash, and Reddy looked ready to pass out. Applejack was fresher, despite the late hour, but even she was showing the strain. Only Pinkie Pie looked unaffected, and Twilight suspected she continued to look unaffected, right until she keeled over and fell asleep on the spot. There were 6 of them, she realized, including Fluttershy. All of the rest of them Earth ponies. Or at least, Earth ponies at the core. They were changed as well, but a different sort of change, one that made them heavier, more solid, sifting like stone. Even the smallest of them looked like Big Mac, and their leader was frighteningly huge. His teeth were even more formidable than Fluttershy's, looking like they could bite through wood, through stone, and each hoof looked heavy enough to crush gravel. With an edge she'd be hard-pressed to give a knife. There was a cruelty in his every line. Power that waited only for the chance to hurt and kill. The only thing that didn't look dangerous was his cutie mark. 3 blue horseshoes, and with a shock, she realized she had seen it before. Applejack's voice spoke. "Caramel?" The Twilight got another shock. "No, but I know him." The voice was rough, deep, and dark, but clear nonetheless. His green eyes had the spark of intelligence. "You can talk?" Twilight blurted, then cringed. "Way to go, Twilight!" she added under her breath, but not quietly enough to avoid the stallion's notice, and he smirked. "Yes, I can talk," he replied. "I've learned the ways of the curse of the night, as all of my herd." Other ponies were wanting her now, eyes sharp and savage, but aware. Only Fluttershy continued to look like a wild animal, held in place by something Twilight didn't understand. "I don't care if you mastered synchronized spitting!" Rainbow Dash demanded. "You give Fluttershy back!" Well, Stallion glanced up at Pegasus, then snored dismissively, returning his attention to Twilight. "The curse of the night is dangerous," he said. "It drives us to hunt, to feed, to kill. You cannot fight it, not if you want to survive. It cannot be mastered by force, but it can be tamed." "Hey! I'm talking to you!" Rainbow Dash protested, looking ready to dart in and clip the Stallion's nose. But Twilight looked up and glared. "Not now, Rainbow Dash!" She returned her attention to the Stallion, who seemed amused again. "You understand the role of a leader," he said. "Good. Then understand this. No harm will come to her. I have taught others the ways of the curse of the night. I will teach her how to let the beast run free, and how to call it back. She will learn to accept its strength without losing her will. She will have a new home, a new family, one she need not fear harming should she lose herself." "She already has a family!" Applejack protested. "I don't care what kind of mumbo-jumbo you got going on in her head. She's still our Fluttershy!" Stallion's lips curled nastily. "You should do well to remember your place." "She knows her place," Twilight spoke, surprising even herself. "It's by the side of her friends. All of her friends." She met the Stallion's gaze, felt the strength of everyone supporting her. Rainbow Dash's ferocity, Applejack's determination, Verity's will, Pinkie Pie's joy, and she could feel the gap where Fluttershy's reassuring gentleness would be. Feel it reaching out and calling to the Pegasus. Fluttershy's wings trembled. "So be it," the Stallion replied, "if you think you could be a better leader than me." He took a step forward, then another, with the inevitability of continental drift.
Then you can prove it.
Rainbow Dash frowned. What did he think he was trying to pull? She pulls some pretty boneheaded stunts in her time. She was brutally honest. Her time hadn't exactly come to an end. But challenging Twilight Sparkle to some sort of macho off? Like they could solve the whole problem by smacking their heads together? No way! No way the smartest pony she knew was going to get involved in something as an I guess oh gosh, Twilight was stepping forward. Twilight, no! She yelled, and the unicorn turned to her. I have to, Dash. They're bigger and stronger than us. Some pony could get seriously hurt if we fought. Some pony is seriously going to get hurt! Rainbow Dash protested. You don't know the first thing about fighting! Let me do it! I'll smack it silly! It has to be me, Twilight replied, her voice calm but firm. But Rainbow Dash, promise me you won't interfere. It has to be between him and me. Her gaze unfaltering, first steady, in that face of expression. What could the Pegasus say? You better be right, she replied, hovering to the other ponies, then allowing Escalation silently. Applejack reached over a hoof, touching her reassuringly. Meredith looked like she was choking on something. Piggy's eyes were eyes as saucers. I am, Twilight said, turning to face her opponent. Then quailing at the sheer magnitude of her task sank in. I hope. The stallion stood still, waiting for her to make the first move. For a moment, she wasn't even sure what to do. How could she fight some pony that big and strong? She only read about fighting in books. How was she supposed to? A stray thought occurred to her. He hadn't said she had to beat him with her hose, now had she? She crouched, focusing her will, her horn glowing violet.
What are you?
The stallion began, then started as a matching glow surrounded his body, lifting him off the ground.
What is this?
It's called magic, Twilight replied, ever levitating and feeling her a bit touch snarky. You may have heard of it.
A trick,
the stallion replied.
I know how to deal with tricks.
He lanced out with one hoof, and incredibly, impossibly, cut the magic off with that sharpened edge, cutting the backups of her own spell breaking. She could only stare in shock as he hopped to the ground, wisps of magic fading around him.
My turn,
he said, and charged her, incredibly fast, faster than any pony his size should be. Still off balance, she was thrown backwards, landing on her back, sliding several feet before coming to a stop. Worse still, he was on top of her now, one hoof pressed against her chest, driving her to the earth. Twilight! Applejack screamed, the ponies looking horrified. Twilight struggled to push that hoof off of her, but it might as well have been made of stone.
A knight ain't this way,
the stallion rumbled, practically in her ear.
Your loyalty is admirable. Submit. The curse in the night can be shared. Join the herd, and you can be with your friend once more.
Twilight gritted her teeth, staring up defiantly at the stallion. I won't submit to you! She replied, her horn glowing again, then vanished. He stumbled, still sticking to the ground where she had been, as he appeared a short distance away, bruised but intact. Woo! Pinkie Pie yelled, having gotten a banner with Twilight's face from somewhere. Let you go, Sparkle!
You're only delaying the end,
the stallion roared, charging Twilight even as she rolled to her hooves. She stood her ground until the last possible second, horn lowered as if to gouge his chest, then leapt sideways, rolling once and finding her hose again. Stallion was quicker than he should be, but not quite quick enough to match her move. Twilight swatched and set up for another charge, bracing herself to dodge again. She had to wear him out somehow, keep him making those wild charges until he couldn't move fast enough to keep her from heading back. She didn't want to hurt him, but that was the only thing he understood. He rushed her again as she rolled, realizing too late it was a feint. He drew himself up short as he moved to the side, then rolled to his side, crushing her again under his sheer bulk. Thankfully he didn't stay there, completing the roll and getting to his hooves. But the cold ground had offered little cushioning, as he staggered upright only with difficulty. You big jerk! Rainbow Dash yelled. How about you pick on someone your own size? Not very likely, Twilight mumbled, trying to focus. The stallion was coming at her again. Slower, but not nearly slowly enough for her liking. She needed something to throw at him. Then she looked down. Horn flaring again was the only warning the stallion got before the ground in front of him flung him out into his eyes, leaving him to stagger back with a roar of anger. ran at him, horn lower and still glowing, only to disappear before she reached him, rearing up to him, facing down. The assembled ponies gaped as she crashed down onto his back like a violet missile, driving him to his knees and bouncing off like a rubber ball. Well done, Twilight! Verity infused. The barrier spell Twilight had used was meant to protect the pony, but the unicorn had flawlessly and elegantly combined it with an improvised alteration of her own teleport spell in a way her own humble skills could not begin to match. Twilight was feeling a little giddy at the success of her gambit, beginning she might think it this a win after all. She doubted the stallion would fall for the same trick twice. Though, she needed something else. Concentrating, she poured the magic into the ground beneath him, and was gratified to hear him bellow in protest as he sank up to his ankles in the dirt before it froze solid. Stay down! She said, electing to charge him with a barrier in front of her, then leapt to him in the head. Then, before her disbelieving eyes, he tore free, bringing his host up just as he was about to hit him, blocking her leap and carrying her to the ground. The barrier absorbed most of the impact, but was unable to take the full force, popping like a soap bubble, leaving her pinned beneath him. Panicking, barely able to breathe, she tried to teleport again, but lost focus when teeth cradled her neck. As the ponies looked on, four of them in shock, four of them in silent approval, one of them between loyalties and new. The stallion spoke. Submit. Twilight struggled, but it was useless. Even if she even started casting a spell, he could tear out her throat. She was no match for him, physically. She knew what was coming. She squeezed her sides shut. But nonetheless, she opened her mouth to say, No! Twilight blinked. That hadn't been her voice. There was a sudden rush of motion, and the pressure was taken off her body. Confused, she looked up to the stallion in shock. It was not her, but Princess Luna! The unicorn looked different than Twilight had seen her look before. Not the dark reflection of Princess Celestia that was Nightmare Moon, nor the smaller form, timid as a foal, that she had taken but appears by the prevalence of harmony. She was tall and slender and beautiful, yet strong and sure and terrible, standing under the light of the full moon and glowing with her birthright. Twilight's friends looked on in amazement. Even Pinkie Pie's face curved in an "Ooh," but the effect on the stallion and his herd was even more dramatic. They were cringing as if the moonlight burned them, staring at the princess with an expression mixing with fear and desire, unable to move a step. You will not kill in my name! With that, the glow surrounding Princess Luna rose to an almost painful intensity, and with it, the light of the moon turned into night into day. Twilight's eyes were watering, but the effect on her was nothing compared to what the cursed stallions, who screamed and writhed in the light. No, they remained still, but the shadows writhed and hissed until they thought they could withstand it no longer, tearing free. They were drawn to Luna like a moth to a flame, or moths to the moon, or some analytical part of Twilight's mind reminded her, pulled her into that light and destroyed her utterly. After a long moment, the light faded, first to a glow, then to a glimmer. As Twilight's eyes strained to adjust, she could see the silhouette of Luna shrink and fade, becoming once more the smaller of the two princesses. The light had not gone completely away, however, for next to Luna stood Princess Celestia! Forgetting her own pain and injuries, Twilight struggled to her hooves and hurried forward, her friends following her example. Celestia smiled gently, turning her eyes to Twilight, her smooth voice soothing and warm. My faithful student, did you think I wouldn't come? Twilight began, then realized she didn't know where she was going from there. What did happened? The curse of the night is a terrible thing, Celestia replied, expressing turning somber. The strength and speed it grants is only good for bringing violence and pain. That these ponies have lived with it and done so little harm is to be commended. Twilight noticed the ponies approaching, heads downcast, bodies humbled. But I thought I had seen the last of its victims long ago.
We weren't a hiding,
Stallion said. I realized that he had changed so subtly. He was still bigger than any stallion I'd ever seen, a strength of the earth in his step, but was no longer a cruel strength. His hooves and teeth lost their deformities, and eyes changed from a dangerous green to a warm silver. Oh my friggin' Celestia's troll shoes!
For those of us who can control it,
he continued, and the four ponies with him completed the circle that Twilight and her friends had unconsciously formed.
And learned how to keep from hurting the ones we cared about. How to hold the beast steady and to let it run. We put our ears in every single village, listening for signs that another had fallen victim to the curse. Forgive me,
He said, turning to Twilight.
when you did not back down.
Ah,
Let the feast take me. I'm glad I did not hurt you.
Um,
a small voice asked. Twilight turned to Fluttershy and gasped. Before, she had been a swift and dangerous predator, held in check only by the charisma of the cursed herd's leader. Now her body was light, but not delicate. An energy almost danced, suffusing her steps. Mane and tail were still wild, but it was the joyous energy of Rainbow Dash's mane, not sort of snarl and ragged thing. Rainbow Dash found out wonders he could make the long-haired look work. Even her eyes changed, returned to instants of wonder, but silver, not turquoise. For a moment, Twilight felt the urge to look for a horn on Fluttershy's brow. No, that's later, Twi.
if you don't ask me, wondering,
Fluttershy wondered. Pushing through the single sound sensor.
how come we still look like this?
The answer came not from Celestia, but from her sister. The coast of the night had another name, long ago, Princess Luna spoke, looking slowly around the circle. When Equestria was still wild and free, before you little ponies claimed it for your own, before my madness. She inclined her head, only briefly, looking again to look at each pony in the eye before speaking. It was called the Blessing of the Moon. Fluttershy sighed softly, sipping her tea, wrinkling a little as she sunk into the warmth of her couch. It had been a hectic week, but at last it was done and behind her. The strange ponies who had come to rescue her that night and helped repair the damage done to Twilight Sparkle's tree, then left the way it came, speaking hopefully of reuniting with former friends and family. One had stayed, a face he had seen around town before, but never spoken to her, keeping their network alive. Princess Luna was using that network to find other cursed ponies, freeing them of the burden of Nightmare Moon's taint on her power. In time, she had said, she hoped there would be another to face that burden. Princess Celestia gradually gone to the Everfree, using her light to purge the darkness. The animals living there had no need of Luna's blessing, and would be happiest returning to their own kind. Pinkie Pie had thrown a party, of course. Fluttershy had enjoyed herself immensely, especially when she was able to get through the whole thing without having a panic attack or finding somewhere to hide. She didn't think she'd ever be outgoing as that party pony, but she found a new, quiet strength to help her carry on. The others had dealt with what happened on their own ways. Twilight insisted on closely examining her, taking copious notes and comparing them to ancient texts on loan from the Canterlot Library. Rarity had hinted at elegant, tasteful evening wear, and though Fluttershy had ultimately declined, she let the unicorn take her measurements, just in case. Applejack had brought her enough apple-based treats to keep her well fed, while Angel recovered from Greenlung, saving her trips to the town. As for Rainbow Dash, she had apparently been working on some special nighttime acrobatics routines, and Fluttershy was expecting the Consoling to join her in the sky sooner than later. She glanced up from the couch, feeling a restless tingler in her body, and stood. It was the same Princess Luna felt there wasn't a place in Equestria for the Blessing of the Moon. It was the sorrow she carried, not the shame of madness past, but the vague yearning of the explorer reaching the end of the world. A regret at savage booty had been replaced with well-tended peace. Fluttershy wasn't so sure what could be done for the princess, or even if there was anything to do, but she resolved to find a way to help. But that could wait. For now, Fluttershy ventured to the door on legs that seemed less willing to touch the ground with each step, pausing just before venturing outside to turn to Angel.
Now, you be good while I'm out looking, Angel?
The rabbit then nodded, then gave her a thumbs up, watching from the window as she faltered into the cobblestones around her cottage. She took a moment to admire it as Dave gave way to night, especially the newest addition, a wide stretch of land which he planted with every grass and bush and moss she found in the Everfree. She didn't know what would live or die. Ultimately, that would be up to it, to thrive or wither. She simply watched and waited, just as it happened to used to, so long ago. She felt the ache in her bones and knew it was time. Her body grew taller and slenderer. Her mane and tail sprung free from their neat and tiny combing. Wings stretched, flapping once and anticipating. She looked to the moon, and her eyes caught and held its light. Then, with a delicate spring, she let her thoughts fade and flew.